Welcome back to the Inside MMA podcast. Today we're recording a pre UFC 268 podcast, kind of talking about the storylines. I'm not too much of a I'm not an expert on martial arts at all. I'm not a guy who like is here to talk about the technicalities of the fighting. What I'm more interested is just covering the sport, what's going on with the fighters, providing access to the fighters, making content about the fighters, the promoters, and the stuff that's going on in the sport, but not so much the fighting in the cage, like what moves are being done, like what different combos are being done. I don't train myself, so I don't really speak on that. I will, however, speak on the stories and the stuff I'm covering. So we're going to be covering the UFC 268 storylines for three fights in particular. And when I say storylines, I'm just mostly talking about what do these fights mean? What are the potential impacts of the fight? You know, what happens if such and such knocks out such and such? What happens if there's only a decision in that fight instead of a knock? That's the stuff I like to talk about more so than like I think Kamaru Uzman is going to take down Colby because his wrestling is much better than Colby's wrestling. Even if I do have knowledge on that, that's not the kind of stuff I want to be talking about. But without further ado, let's get into it. I'm actually going live on TikTok here while I record this just to test this out. So if I'm answering some questions that come in on the TikTok, forgive me, but I'll try to only answer ones that pertain to what I'm talking about. For those who are listening here on YouTube or on the audio version, wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple or whatever, we're pretty much everywhere. So I'm letting people roll in here. But so yeah, the three fights that I really want to get into today are they're all on the main card. It's Chandler and Gaichi, Thug Rose versus Wei Li Zhang, and then Kamara versus Colby, obviously. So I'm gonna start off with Chandler versus Gaichi. First off, I want to say I'm a huge fan of Michael Chandler. I think he's super fun to follow. I think that he's a super inspirational guy. I think that he has such a cool story with being the guy at lightweight in Bellator and then coming over to the UFC on a quest for a lightweight title at UFC at the pretty much the highest level of mixed martial arts professionally. I think that's a super interesting and intriguing journey to watch. So I've been paying very close attention to him since he's really been in the UFC. So um I'm I here's my thing. I think Justin Gaethje is going to win this fight. I think that basically I think he's probably the better fighter. I think Chandler might be a little more worn out. But I think it's a super important fight for both of them. I feel like if Chandler wins this fight, well, let me stop there. I think if Chandler loses this fight, it really would kind of ruin his momentum toward the title. I feel like right now he kind of has like a little more momentum going just because he just fought for the title. He's just in that conversation, and I know people think that he didn't really deserve the title shot that he got, but he got it. So for him to lose to Charles Oliveira, who's another, top contender, obviously, that was very interesting. And I think if he loses to Justin Gaethje, he would have a long ladder to climb to get back into title contention. And I think same for Justin Gaethje, because Justin Gaethje's already lost to Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is about to fight for the title. And I know you can't really do MMA math, but like if you count up the guys, if you've lost to the guys who, if you lose to Michael Chandler and you lose to Dustin Poirier, now there's two guys in the top 5 who've beat you, and who would probably fight for the title themselves. So it's like, why would you think you're still really in the conversation. But I know crazy things can happen. I don't think Justin Gaethje losing would like knock him out of the top 5 or 6 in the rankings, but I just think it would. If Michael Chandler or Justin Gaethje lose, it's not going to be good for their careers. I think it's going to really ruin like the how close they are to the title. So I think it's I know Justin Gaethje was promised a title fight if he beats Michael Chandler. I don't know if Michael Chandler was promised the same thing. He hasn't talked about that as far as the content I've seen. He hasn't talked about that. So I'm sure he would get one if Justin Gaethje was offered one if pending a win. But I don't know. I don't think Michael Chandler is going to win this fight. I do think it's possible. I think he's the favorite, but I'm not sure. I'm not really like into betting too much. I'm a huge fan of Michael Chandler. I like Justin Gaethje. I'm definitely not as big of a fan of him as I am Michael Chandler because Michael Chandler's just one of my favorite fighters right now. But I got to be an objective fan, and I think Michael Chandler is going to take the L, unfortunately. But we'll see. I know it's going to be a great fight, and people are already saying it's probably going to be one of the best lightweight fights of all time just because of like how these guys match up together. They're both All-American wrestlers. They're both they both got great hands, and just those two things kind of canceling each other out. It's definitely going to be contentious. But you never know. So yeah. Somebody commented in the comments, Poirier wins, Gaethje wins, Poirier Gaethje rematch for the belt, and Dustin wins that too. That's probably what I see. That's what I would guess happens. Like I said, I think that Justin Gaethje is going to win this fight against Michael Chandler, and then he'll get a shot at the title. And I think Dustin, sorry, no, it's confusing. Justin beats Michael Chandler, and I think Dustin Poirier beats Charles Oliveira, and then Dustin faces Justin for the title, and Dustin wins the rematch. I don't think Chandler and Oliveira fight. I think Chandler's going to lose, and he'll fight somebody else. I think Charles Oliveira is going to then probably fight, I think, Islam Makhachev. I think that is the next fight for Islam. I said this in one of my TikToks, or I said this in the last podcast, which I turned into a TikTok. I definitely think the next fight to make for Islam, in my opinion, is Charles Oliveira. Whether he wins or loses the title fight, if Charles Oliveira ends up beating Dustin to become the champion, I know that Justin Gaethje was promised that fight, but I think that would be a great fight to break Islam into the upper echelons of the top 5. Because if Charles loses, he's still going to be one of those top guys in the lightweight division, and that would be such a great matchup for Islam Makhachev to prove himself, and I think he would win. Islam and Oliveira would be good for a number 1 contender spot. Yeah, here's my thing. If Michael Chandler loses this fight, I'm not really sure where to go from here with him. Because he's good, but he's not really like a fan favorite, and people don't really like the fact that he's getting all these opportunities. Someone said, "What do you think about Justin?" I mean, I think he's going to beat Michael Chandler. I'm not an expert at martial arts by any means, so I don't really break down the fighters and their skills. I'm more just talking about the overall what's going on in the sport. If you guys are in the live right now, make sure you drop a like. But yeah, all right, I'm gonna move on. That's my thoughts about Chandler versus Gaethje, and I'll be back to talk about what's it called? All of this after the event as well. So the three fights I'm talking about in this episode again are Chandler and Gaichi. We already covered that, and then Thug Rose versus Wei Li Zhang, and then Colby versus Kamaru. Let's move on to Thug Rose versus Wei Li Zhang. Here's my question about this fight. What is the future of strawweight if Thug Rose beats Wei Li Zhang again? And here's why I ask. They've both beat out all the top contenders. They've both beat all the... So it's like there's really... That would make Thug Rose be undefeated against Zhang Weili, who's the number one contender for the belt. So that would... you can't really make up a trilogy for that fight if the top contender has already lost to the champion twice without a win. And like I said, they've both beat out pretty much everybody else. And I'm not... That division isn't super stacked. So I don't really know what does Rose do if she wins again? Does she just go through the rounds? That's my big question. So then my next question after that is, what does the UFC want to happen? Now think about this from the UFC's perspective, and I'm not saying the UFC wanting anything is going to impact what happens in the fight, but you can kind of always see it in how they promote the fights, who they want to win. Wei Li Zhang is from China. I'm pretty sure the UFC is trying to break into the Chinese market. They're just trying to be... They're trying to break into more international markets. So if Wei Li Zhang loses, that doesn't help their initiative to bring in more fans from China and more fighters from China. And if you think about it this way, having a Chinese champion would encourage more Chinese people to want to be fighters and strive to be champions, because they're looking up to this person and that person is champion, so then they think they can be champion. So then you got to think that the UFC wants Wei Li Zhang to win. If you look at it in some kind of way, right? You can make a case for that. And here's another reason it would be good for Wei Li Zhang to win, is because if she wins, then you can set up an instant trilogy, which would be another massive fight, because these are two big stars at strawweight. I don't think we're going to see a big knockout like we did last time. But here's something interesting. I was listening to Chael Sonnen earlier today. I listened to all these guys, all these media guys. I listen to them. But I was listening to Chael earlier today, and he was kind of saying that he doesn't think Wei Li Zhang deserves a rematch because of the way she lost. So I found that kind of interesting, because in my head she was just she's just far and away the top contender for the belt. Then he kind of went on to say how basically nobody else made their case, and nobody else complained enough, apparently, to say, why is Wei Li getting that title shot again after she just got the shit knocked out of her by Thug Rose? So here's my opinion. Rose is a true competitor. She won in a way that wasn't super convincing. It was an early knockout. That happens sometimes. Like, if she had gone like a longer time in that fight and then knocked her out later on, or like later on even in the first round, then you got to think, okay, she's just better. But if you knock someone out that early on, it's like, okay, this could be a fluke. So, and I'm not saying it was a fluke, but Thug Rose, I'm saying, is clearly a true competitor for wanting to do that rematch right away against the biggest threat to her belt, just to prove that she actually is the better fighter, and then that early knockout to the head wasn't a fluke. So, this fight to me kind of positions Thug Rose and Wei Li Zhang as the two people that are completely far and away the best two people in this division, which kind of makes it interesting because, again, if Thug Rose wins, what do you do going forward? It's not as exciting going forward. It's only exciting if Wei Li Zhang wins. Somebody in the comments said, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about marketing. Nate Diaz, blah, blah, blah. So it is about marketing. And there's not much to market at strawweight if Thug Rose wins again. But we'll see. Who's in this chat? Yo, leave some questions down. I'm answering questions as I talk about each fight. See some of you guys in here. Leave a like if you're in there. Somebody asked Prime Khabib or Prime Connor. I mean, Khabib, let's be honest. Definitely Khabib. Who you got? Poirier or Oliveira? I got Dustin Poirier winning that one. I think he's just at the top of his game right now. In my opinion, all these guys who are trying to get the title right now are trying to get it before Islam does, because once Islam gets it, all these guys are afraid of Islam. Dustin Poirier even said the guy to fear is Islam. Nobody at the time when he said that, there was a bunch of guys ranked ahead of Islam, and he said the guy to fear is Islam. So I think Dustin needs to win this if he ever wants to get, not saying he can't beat Islam, but it's like, that guy's scary. I think all these guys know it. But yeah, keep leaving questions in there. Thank you. You guys are liking the shit out of this. Thank you guys. This is fun as hell, doing these live streams. All right, let's move on to Colby Covington versus Kamaru Uzman. This fight is, to me, it's kind of similar to the last one we were just talking about, but it's at 170. So this fight seems like the only fight that there's really left for Kamaru Usman before he starts really lapping everybody up, or moving to a different weight class. Somebody said Colby winning by the third round by TKO. I don't think so. The last fight had a somewhat controversial stoppage, and Colby seemed to be like the only guy to really give Kamaru a real fight in recent memory. And here's the thing. I think Kamaru's definitely my boy said so fine. I think Kamaru's definitely gonna win this one. I don't know what happens going forward, but I think he's gonna win. I think if Colby does win, if Colby pulls it off somehow, then what you do is you automatically set up a trilogy fight that's going to end up being a super fight, which probably sells over 1 million pay-per-views. If you want to sell, I feel like if you want to sell over 1 million pay-per-views, you need a guy like Colby to be one of the guys on the main card, or on the main event, because you need a chirper. All the big fights we've seen that sell tons of pay-per-views recently, with the recent kind of like newer branding of the UFC, it's like Conor McGregor is one of the two guys, and he's obviously the best, most entertaining talker in the game. But Colby's kind of followed that model of like just being a shit talker, but he's just taking it to the extreme. So I think a controversial, attention-seeking guy like that is good for selling pay-per-views. And then if it's a trilogy fight, that makes the stakes super high. But I don't think it even gets to there. I think Kamaru's gonna win. What's after this fight for Kamaru if he wins, which I think he will. The Kamaru's making his case as the GOAT, in my opinion. My GOAT, the guy who I think is the best right now, is I'm sorry, I'm tweaking out. Is George St. Pierre. GSP is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. So the reason I don't say John Jones is because of PEDs. I feel like in any sport, if you get caught doing PEDs, the reason I say getting caught is because I know a lot of guys do them and don't get caught. But if you get caught, you can't really deny that you've been doing them. I can only really go off of that. So if you've been caught doing PEDs, which John Jones has multiple times, I gotta eliminate you from that, just like I would if I eliminated you from baseball. Like guys don't make the Hall of Fame in baseball because they got caught doing PEDs. So why would somebody in the UFC get caught doing PEDs and still be considered the GOAT? That doesn't make sense to me. So, and I apply that to any sport. So anyway, GSP is my GOAT, and I think Kamaru is making his case to dethrone him. I'm not saying he has yet, but the thing that kind of renders GSP as the GOAT is like he beat everybody in his division, and then the next generation of fighters came in and he beat all of them, and he kept lapping his division, and then he retired for 4 years, came back and beat Michael Bisping at a different weight class, 4 years after 4 years of being out of the sport. So like he just has this unreal career. And I mean, Kamaru is the only guy who we've seen not get popped for steroids and have a career or on that level, or at least that's his trajectory right now, because I think he's on like a 13 or 14 fight win streak. He's beat everybody. I think the only thing left for Kamaru is either go to a different weight class or just lap the fuck out of his division and beat all the up and coming guys. The reason that I think he might stay at 170 is because, well, I'm gonna go on a little tangent here. There's an up and comer at 170 who looks super threatening to everybody. Who's that? Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev is the next up and coming guy at 170. I know he's not up there yet, but he'll be contending for a title pretty soon. The way he's beating these people is insane. I give him one more fight before he's in title contention. One more win. If Kamaru stays at 170 and he is able to hold his title against an up and comer like Khamzat Chimaev, he can really you can really start putting him up there with GSP, because that's lapping the division, waiting for the next generation to come, beating all of the next generation. So that would be crazy. Kamaru's already the pound for pound number one guy right now. He hasn't been popped for PEDs as far as I know. And, he's putting up a near record breaking winning streak. He's setting it up perfectly right now to, make his case as the GOAT. Somebody said, I think he just left, but tell him I'm answering now. So somebody said, y'all defend Aljo so hard because he was on your podcast. Bruh, I've been defending Aljo before he was on my well, he actually wasn't on my podcast. Aljo, I was on his podcast. Just because I know him and I've worked with him before, and he just asked me because he needed somebody on his podcast. That wasn't that big of a deal, quite honestly. I mean, it was cool, but I've known him for a while. I've been defending him before I was on his podcast. I've been defending him before I ever worked with him. I've known all those guys for a long time. Okay, so there's that. I mean, I've seen a lot of people saying bullshit like that. That's not true. Um, somebody said, "What's your take on Khabib versus GSP?" I mean, like, are we talking prime Khabib versus GSP, or if they fought now? If they fought now, Khabib. If we're talking about when they're both in their prime, GSP. Khabib if they fought today, GSP if they fought both in their prime. I actually have a podcast in my. You can click the link in my bio on TikTok. I have a podcast where I give all my predictions for UFC 268 with a pro fighter, John Beneducci. John, he's not a huge name, but we're making a documentary together, and we did a podcast. He is a professional mixed martial artist. He's a second-degree black belt under Matt Serra in jiu-jitsu, and he trains at Ray Longo's gym. That's how I met all these pro fighters. What somebody said what? So my prediction for the weekend, you can watch that. I'll go through them right now really quick. I got Kamaru winning against Colby. I got Rose beating Wei Li Zhang. I got Justin Gaethje beating Michael Chandler. Let's see. I predict Billy Quarantillo to beat Shane Burgos. I got Marlon Vera beating Frankie Edgar. I got Ally Quinta beating Bobby Green, which might be a little biased. I'm not from Long Island. Okay, I'll answer some more questions here in the chat. Leave a like if you're watching right now. It helps out with our platform. What's your prediction this weekend for the fights? So I just said those. Somebody asked, "Am I from Long Island?" No, I'm a frequent visitor, but I do not live there. Whenever I film with John Beneducci, I go to Long Island. So I've been there twice in the past year. Actually, a year ago today, I was there for the first time. Do I think Max Holloway will be champion again? That's a tough question because his losses to Volkanovski are highly controversial. I'd have to go back and watch those fights again. I think he could. I think he could if he fights Volkanovski again. I think he could win. I think I would have liked his chances more if it was like a couple years ago. But I think Max is a smart guy. I think he's protecting his head really well. So normally, as guys get older and more seasoned, I think, yeah, his fight against Cater was crazy. But I personally think he won the second fight. Yeah, I mean, those two fights were very, very like controversial, and they're kind of notorious for being controversial. So I think he still could, especially because I know how smart he is with his health. I know he's not sparring, or at least he says he's not, and he's still, got some of the best hands in the game. So I mean, yeah, he could win again. I don't know if I'd bet on it, but I think it's definitely possible. Somebody said Bobby Green, lock of the card. I assume that means that he think Bobby Green's the only guy. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I actually, fun fact: Ally Quinta is an interview. He's one of the people in my documentary with John Beneducci, who I was talking about earlier. So I am biased. I'm saying I'm betting on. I'm not betting with my own. I'm not like actually financially betting on anything, but I'm gonna say I think Al's gonna win because I don't want to go against him. He helped me out. He might not even remember who I am. Because our interview was so quick. I mean, but I'm a loyal guy. Who's my favorite UFC fighter? Right now, probably Michael Chandler, to be honest. I mean, he's the guy who I like watching the most. But the guy who got me into it like 5 years ago was Conor McGregor. Funny story. I got really into I got really into the combat sports because of Conor. I think a lot of people did really, but that I was always making content before I even watched Conor McGregor. I started off making vlogs and stuff, and then I made a documentary about my high school baseball team. And the thing that inspired me to start making documentaries was Conor McGregor's Netflix documentary. And now I'm making a documentary with a fighter. So it's funny how all this stuff comes full circle. And I'm a content creator about MMA. That's what I make content about. I'm trying to make documentaries specifically about pro fighters. So starting with the one with John, and we'll do more pro fighters after that. I've been lucky enough to network in there. What's it called? I've been networking with the guys um at Long Island. There's a ton of pros up there, and hopefully I can kind of spread my wings after we release this doc and maybe talk to guys at other camps. My dream interview right now is Michael Chandler, so I would say that's my favorite guy. Um, yeah, the sport's awesome. Somebody said, "Where's the doc gonna be on?" That's on that we don't know yet. It's almost done here. We're just adding some final touches now. It'll probably be released in the next few months, but probably we're just gonna release it independently. Um, I maybe just like sell it on like iTunes or Vimeo, and then you guys can go buy it, and check it out. We don't have any sponsors or anything, so we have to make all our money independently. So we've spent a decent amount of money making it. John and I produced it, and I'm super excited to release it. So that answers that question. The next question is Chandler versus Islam. Who wins? Tough question. Like if they fought today, I could see Chandler pulling through. I don't think it's a lock for either of them. I would say Islam's the favorite in that fight, but I don't think it's like certainly that Islam's going to win. So I'd say Islam's the favorite in that fight today. In like a year, definitely I would say Islam's the far and away favorite. He just still has so much like potential. Do I think Conor can bounce back? Hold on one sec. Getting some text here. Pardon me. Do I think Conor can bounce back? I'm not sure, quite honestly. I think I I feel like watching Conor over his career. It's like I have a TikTok about this. It was like people called me a casual for saying this, but I feel like for his MMA career specifically, if you look at his MMA career in a vacuum, him fighting Floyd kind of ruined his MMA career. It gave him a fuck ton of money. It inflated the shit out of his ego. It made him think he was bigger than he is. Maybe rightfully so, because it made him like that fight. What did that sell? Like 4 million pay-per-views or some shit. I don't know if that'll ever happen in MMA. At least not for a long ass time. I think more people can get into boxing because it's a little less gory. It's a little less uh like violent as hell. So I think more people can get into boxing. That means you can sell more pay-per-views. There's just a bigger market for it. I don't think the world has opened up to MMA like it has boxing just yet. And MMA is still a very young sport compared to boxing. If you're in the chat, make sure you leave a like. It really helps out. Um, so can Conor bounce back? If he like the thing with Conor is he's such a big guy. Like what am I saying? He's such a big businessman that okay, think about this. Like Mark Cuban, right? Or Gary Vee. You guys probably all know who Gary Vee is. Leave a like if you know who Gary Vee is. Gary Vee is a big serial entrepreneur, and he's got all these different businesses he has to run. When you're a guy like that, Connor is, on the similar caliber. If not, he's probably a more successful businessman than Gary Vee. Like, he's probably making more money in a shorter amount of time. I'm not saying he's a better entrepreneur or anything, but he's just got a bigger brand that's more sellable and scalable. Like, guys who have all these businesses, like Connor can't just tell people to run his businesses. He has to be in all of these things if he wants to do them successfully. Nobody can just hire people to do everything for them and then they acquire all this wealth. That's not really possible until you're like a multi-billionaire. So Connor, unless he wants to put all that stuff off and really rededicate himself to fighting, I don't think he can bounce back and be a contender. Now, can he put on super fights in the UFC? Of course. There's all kinds of options there. But I think he needs a win in his next fight or two. Otherwise, people are going to stop caring as much. That's my opinion. So it might. And I think all of his businesses need. They do well based on how well he's fighting. Like if Proper 12, like if Connor doesn't do all the things he does in MMA, Proper 12 doesn't sell the way it does. He actually sold some of Proper 12 before his last fight, and some people speculate that the reason he sold it was because he thought he was going to lose, and he knew like he wanted to get out of Proper 12 before he started losing. That's a stretch to me, but it does show like Michael Jordan. Let's compare. I'm not saying Connor's the GOAT of MMA, but let's compare. If Michael Jordan doesn't do what he does on the court, he's not selling all the shoes he's selling now. If he doesn't have that impeccable image of such a stud basketball player and have this aura of invincibility, Superman powers that he did on the court, he doesn't sell all those shoes. Now, when Connor was at his peak in MMA, like when he fought Eddie Alvarez, he seemed like a magician, like he was predicting the future and shit. And it was like he had this crazy vibe and aura about him, which made him much more sellable. Let's move on to the next question. Thoughts on the Jones situation? John Jones. I know some people like don't really care what he does off the field, quote unquote. I do. I don't fuck that guy, really. I mean, if he actually hit his wife, like he shouldn't be like on fighting people, That's just fucked up. Like I just saw this clip about like how Chris Brown beat up Rihanna, and then you think about like now he's like still like doing his thing. So why the fuck should guys who hit women be allowed to do like compete for millions of dollars and have freedom? Fuck that. Especially when you're the fucking one of the best fighters of all time. Why the fuck should why like if you hit that's like disgraceful. That's like that would be like if a Navy SEAL started opening fire on people who've never held a gun before. It's like it doesn't make sense to me. Leave a like if you agree. If Colby Uzman 2 prediction, I mean, I think Uzman wins. If anything, and then they followed up with what's going to be different. If anything's different to me, it's probably that Uzman wins by he puts up an even better fight. So somebody asked what style is best for MMA and why is it wrestling? All seriousness, I'm not a mixed martial artist. I'm not even a martial artist. I just like the sport, so I don't really talk about what I'm not good at. That's not my area. I'm not here to talk about the nitty-gritty details of certain bouts. I'm here to talk about the sport overall and talk about the fighters and the promoters, not really what goes on in the octagon as much. I'll talk about if a guy knocks another guy out or if a guy submits another guy or if there's a decision, but I'm not going to talk about the moves because that's not my area of interest or knowledge. If they somebody said if they enforced it, there would probably be no NFL. Well, they should enforce it, and then you attract higher quality guys who don't hit people. But I think one of the problems is this brain trauma seems to actually sometimes this brain trauma seems to make these guys more prone to hitting other people for some reason. Somebody said Colby by murder. No, come on, man. Uzman was talking about fighting Canelo recently. I haven't heard about this. I'll look it up really quick. Call me a casual. I'm on MSN.com in their sports section. I guess this is Microsoft News. That's what this stands for. Straight up, Uzman. I'm reading you guys this article. Straight up, Uzman believes a fight with Canelo has got to happen. And quotes, "It only makes sense because we're in an era where people want to be entertained," Usman told DAZN over the phone Tuesday evening about a potential mega bout with Mexican superstar Canelo Alvarez. So in order to entertain people, when have we in history ever seen the two pound-for-pound fighters in the world in combat sports at the top of their prime? When have we ever seen them compete? It never happened. With Usman 34 and Canelo being 31, the Nigerian Nightmare thinks the timing is right for both fighting champions to scrap and make history under what could be one of the grandest marquees that combat sports has ever seen. Usman thinks there needs to be urgency to make the dream bout happen in order for it to not repeat history when it comes to these kind of mega clashes. Okay. I fuck with it. If he does that, though, like, that's a huge distraction. That's like when we've seen with Conor. Going to boxing, you're probably not coming back. Like, it's a huge distraction. So, like, I'm not sure if he does that, is he gonna abandon his goals of being the best, fighter ever? I don't know if that is his goal, but if it seems like it is. My cat's going crazy. I'd like to see it. I think he has a good point though. Like, this could be a huge fight. I think Canelo would win in a boxing fight because it's boxing and he's the best boxer in the world. I think Kamara should probably just stay in MMA and then do this later on. For the sake of his MMA career. But these guys want to get paid. Like, the UFC's not paying him super, super high amounts of money like boxing would. So, especially when you got Jake Paul dangling all his money in your face, it's like it doesn't really make you want to like fight a ton. But I digress. Somebody said Chris Benoit and Aaron Hernandez are good examples of what brain trauma can do. Well, if you watch that Aaron Hernandez documentary, like, it seemed like he was like kind of like mentally abused as a kid for his sexuality. So it's like apparently he was like fucking some boy or like hooking up with some boy and his dad like didn't approve of it, or his boyfriend's dad didn't approve of it, and they had to keep it all secret. And then you combine that with the head trauma. When these guys have real emotional trauma and brain trauma, it seems like these guys have a lot of like they have a lot of just problems dealing with other people, which makes sense. I mean, they should all get there. Really, what should happen is the NFL should get all these guys free therapy. I mean, God knows they can afford it. But I'm not here to talk about the NFL. Yo, leave a like if you're in. Leave a like if you're in. The same guy who asked about Aaron Hernandez said, "Have you heard about the Chris Benoit situation?" No, let me look that up. Is it just me, or does football seem like it has some kind of like genetic relativity to MMA just because of how physically violent the sports are. Obviously, MMA is way more violent, but um, like I feel like there's kind of like it doesn't seem like MMA guys act how some of these football guys act though. So it is interesting. So I'm looking up this Chris Benoit situation. Over a 3-day period from June 22nd to 24th in 2007, Chris Benoit, a 40-year-old Canadian professional wrestler employed by WWE and living in Fayetteville, Georgia, killed his wife, Nancy Benoit, and their 7-year-old son, Daniel, before hanging himself in a double murder-suicide. Autopsy results showed that Benoit's wife was murdered first as she was bound at the feet and wrists and died of asphyxiation on the night of the 22nd. On June 25th, Nancy was found wrapped in a towel with blood under her head, although Fayette County District Attorney Scott Bauer reported no other signs of a struggle. The couple's son, Daniel Christopher Benoit, who also died of asphyxia, meaning he was suffocated, was killed as he was lying sedated on his bed on the morning of June 23rd. Shit. Then on the evening of June 24th, Benoit killed himself in his weight room. All right, yeah. So phone fucking died. All right. Well, so the stream's over. I'm done answering questions. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on YouTube. Keep listening to the pod. Love doing these, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.